When I was a kid, I had a fake friend. This friend and I never really got along, but my best friend did, and she told her about all the stuff that I had but never used. Suddenly, every hangout was now conveniently hosted at my place, and she would always leave with something that was mine. Well, one day she was eyeing this pink watch that I had. My parents were already really upset with me giving stuff away, so I told her no. She threw a fit and stormed off. After a heavy guilt trip, I finally gave in and said fine. I swear it was like living an elementary school version of Mean Girls. When I was a teenager, I got fired from a job on my first day. So one summer when applying for jobs, a certain iconic popular Canadian coffee shop that shall remain nameless decided to call me in for an interview. Well, I showed up, told them about my zero experience, wasn't expecting to hear a call back. But a week later, I did get a call back. "Where are you?" I just answered, "At home?" And she goes on, "I scheduled you for shifts on Tuesday, Thursday, and today, and you decide not to show up?" Legit, I never even got a phone call, email, to indicate that I got the job in the first place. But maybe that's a good thing. When I was a kid, my family and I would vacation to this water park. But this was not any ordinary water park. Most of the water slides were built into the mountain that you had to take ski lifts to get to. Well, one of these times, my dad, sister, and I decided to go on the wavy, lazy river. Except they crowded so many people into this thing. Out of nowhere, a huge wave comes at us. Down goes my sister and myself. I was trying to find a hole to pop my head out from all these people. I finally broke through and took in a massive gust of air. Even to this day, I have a god-awful fear of water. When I was a kid, I kind of wanted to fit into the bad kids crew who went to the community school. Well, one day, I pretended I went to their school. We snuck through a fence to their ravine and ate some Doritos. And they just threw the empty bag on the ground. "This isn't a problem for you, is it?" they asked as they saw my shocked face. Nope, not at all. When I went to school the next day, it was my turn to be a bad kid. So I finished up my juice box and tossed it right on the ground, only for a teacher to come straight up to me. "Unacceptable! That's a detention!" I guess we all can't be part of the bad kid crew. I used to get hungry at really random times. So one night I was out with my friends and every food place was closed. But of course my hunger struck. And this one girl next to me says, "Girl, I got something for you." And out of her purse she pulls out these open cold cuts, which I then started devouring in seconds. The next day my friends were laughing that I would take cold cuts from some random girl's purse. Wait, I thought she was one of my friend's friends, but apparently nobody from my group actually knew who this girl was. So moral of the story, don't take food from strangers. When I was a kid, my brother and I loved staying up past our bedtime. Well, on one of our nightly hijinks, we decided to sneak into my sister's room. She had been sick, so my dad gave her some candy, and we wanted this candy too. It tasted a bit chalky, but boy was it good. Our dad came into the room, panicked to find out that we ate the entire box of my sister's cold medicine. Next thing I knew, we were rushing to the ER and forced to drink this disgusting thick black tar, and then had our stomachs pumped. Just a bit traumatizing for a 5-year-old. When I was a kid, I had an all-time favorite pink sweater, and one day while playing on the playground, I took it off and lost it. Now, our school shared a playground with a private all-girls school. Months go by, and one day as I was using the bathroom to this private school, I noticed my sweater in their display case. "Spring is here. Please, you mean my sweater?" So I went to one of my teachers and told them, "Look, that's my sweater," who went to talk to their school master to come back and tell me that because there was no name on it, they couldn't prove it was mine. Long story short, I never got that sweater back. When I was a kid, I was always obsessed with thrill rides. So my first trip to Disneyland, I had to go on Splash Mountain. I was not the brightest kid in the sea, and when we were coming over the giant hill at the end, there were a pile of thorns at the bottom. I kid you not, my 11-year-old brain was so convinced that we were gonna crash into the thorns. So I started yelling, "Quick, remove the thorns!" I honestly thought in that moment, well, I guess I'm gonna die today. And suddenly we swooshed under them. I guess Disney is really as magical as they say. You get to live in the end. When I was a kid, I was so excited to start kindergarten. Having never been to school before, I was ready with my button-down blouse and sparkly pink shoes. A week goes by and I had made friends, started joining activities, until one day my principal's at the door. He and my teacher are whispering, and then he calls on me and asks me to bring my stuff. They revealed to me that I wasn't supposed to be in this class. I burst into tears, thinking that I had failed kindergarten. Turns out my parents just put me in senior kindergarten instead of junior, thinking that I could just skip ahead. Guess we all gotta fail sometimes. When I was a kid, one extremely hot summer, I discovered I didn't own any shorts. I'd asked my parents if we could buy some, but we were kind of broke. So the answer was always, "We'll see." So one day I took matters into my own hands and made a pair of shorts from some jeans I owned. Being the delightful child I was, I cut the left pant leg right up to my butt, felt that might be a little too short, and cut the right pant leg to my knee. I was proud to call these my own Remy Haute Couture, until my parents found out and ripped me a new one. I was grounded for a month. In one of my first jobs I've ever had, I worked at a ticketing booth for a local theater, and it was our policy to avoid refunds or exchanges. is. So one day, on the day of a show, this man had come up to my window and asked why somebody had already been sitting in his seat. Turns out he actually bought from a scalper online. He asked if there was anything we can do, since he had felt like he'd been screwed over. And as the terribly anxious person I am in confrontation, I just told him in a pleasantly oblivious voice, "Oh no, sir, you already got screwed. The scalper did that to you." My manager pulled me away slyly and inevitably gave the man 2 tickets. Probably for the best there. I was in a lot of clubs in high school, some of which took place on Saturdays, which was nice because nobody was at the school. Like one Saturday, my friend and I decided to raid the teacher's lounge and eat all their ice cream. Well, a few days later, my younger sister, who was in after-school club, ran up to me laughing so hard. Her and her friend blurted out, "We just ran into the teacher's lounge and ate a scoop of ice cream." Being the responsible older sister I was, I just told her flat out, "Wow, that was very dishonest of you." Her laughter died as she walked away sadly. Meanwhile, my friend and I laughed at the irony. When I was a kid, we used to have these school fundraisers where we would sell chocolate bars, and most kids just had their parents sell them at work. Well, I was not most kids. I sold door to door, and selling 300 chocolate bars to random strangers is hard. 100 bars down, and my brother and I were exhausted and hungry, so we sat on a park bench and thought, what if we just ate one? Well, slowly, 1 turned into 2, and 2 turned into 4, and eventually we ate the entire box of chocolate. When the school found out, they made my parents pay back every dime. When I was in high school, I would usually take the subway home, and on one ride home, a woman came up to me asking for directions, and if I lived around this area. I gave her some vague answer, laughed it off, and started walking away. Suddenly, she grabbed my arm and said calm and firmly, "You're looking very cold and frail, dear. Do you want a bite to eat?" My stranger senses were tingling, so I just kept walking and persisted with a very stern no. After I turned the corner, I started to realize she was following me at a distance. So I called my sister in a panic. The woman must have gotten nervous that I was on a phone call, because next thing I knew, she was gone. Definitely a close call. When I was in college, my friend asked me to take care of her adorable Dumbo rat for a couple weeks. I had never been a pet owner before, so I wanted to do the best job possible. I went to the pet store and stocked up on everything I could need. Bedding, toys, and the biggest bag of food imaginable. This 40-pound bag could feed an army of rats, let alone one. But I did notice the food starting to disappear faster than it should be. So I did a little investigating. Turns out a small little hole had been chewed in through the backside of the bag. Apparently I had been feeding all the rodents in my house because I attracted mice. When I was a kid, my family and I were traveling on a plane, and I brought my favorite stuffed animal cat that sounded like it purred when you moved it. We had a layover, so when our flight landed, we booked it to our next gate, when suddenly an announcement came up on the speakers requesting our family to come back immediately. That's when I realized I forgot my stuffed animal. I figured with us being so close to the next flight, my parents were going to ignore it, but no. We made the trek all the way back. They made us get back on the plane, right to our seat, so I can grab the stuffed animal at hand. Then made some comment about unattended items constituting as a domestic threat. Whoops. When I was a kid, my brother and I got grounded from watching TV, but we decided to watch anyways. Except our TV was really old, and it was a little quirky to get the buttons just right to turn down the volume. We thought maybe if we turn the TV on fast and turn it down really quickly, no one will know. We counted down, and each of us were ready to push our buttons, when suddenly, the largest face of Pennywise came on the TV, at full volume. We shut that thing off so fast, and didn't touch it again for the rest of the week. When I was a kid, I had a really hard time getting my homework done, and I started getting called out about it in front of the whole class from my teacher. Kind of embarrassing. Well, one day, as usual, I was procrastinating. So the next day, with no homework done at all, I had the wise idea that maybe I could get it done under the highway bridge on the walk to school. In my mind, it was perfect. Dark, quiet, calm. In reality, it was super loud and my paper started blowing away. Inevitably, I didn't get anything done, and I had to explain to my teacher that the bridge ate my homework. When I was a kid, I once got called to the principal's office. My class erupted in a judgmental ooh as I scurried my little butt off to the office. So I sat across from my principal, who gave me a long, concerned look before asking, "Is everything okay at home?" We've had some concerned parents call and say they saw you doing homework on the highway under a bridge. And in a lie, obviously. I just brushed it off and said, "No, that must be some other weird person." She then slid muddy papers across her desk. My name, clear as day. Guess you can't always get out of a lie. When I was a kid, I had to walk to school, but I was new to the neighborhood and didn't know how to get there. Luckily, my neighbor, who I didn't know yet, knew exactly where to go. So I decided to follow her. But she suddenly took a detour and went into a house. So I stood outside waiting while an older woman from inside the house noticed me and insisted that I come inside to warm up. I tried to refuse, but she wouldn't take no as an answer. So reluctantly, I walked inside a stranger's home, only to face my new neighbor's reaction. full deer in the headlights. Off to a wonderful first impression. When I was a kid, I had this bright idea to start a band. I'd already started making all the band promotions, flyers, tickets, and even figured out the logistics of where we should play. So I rounded up a bunch of friends, with the only real issue being that we didn't know how to play any instruments. I guess it never really clued in until we got a slot at the talent show. So on an impulse, I gathered up the most random objects to make instruments. I showed up with a karaoke microphone, a winter sled, and some Kleenex boxes with elastic bands. Well, seeing that, my friends dropped out, and I was left with an empty talent show slot on my own. When I was younger, one Christmas gift exchange took an interesting turn. Things were going great until my grandma opened a gift from my cousin, a sci-fi action thriller about aliens. Not her usual taste. So I asked him why he thought grandma would like this, and he said, she loves Lord of the Rings, and the same guy produced this. Grandma insisted that we all sit down and watch the movie together. Look, the movie was amazing, but also extremely gruesome. But she just sat through the whole thing without emotion or comment. When it ended, she stood up, turned to my cousin, and said, "Thank you, sweetie. That was rather interesting." I don't think she ever used that gift again. When I was a kid, I was trying to make a little extra money and decided to open a stand outside my house. I bought gum from the corner store across the street for $1 in the middle of winter and sold each pack for $5. Now, there wasn't a lot of foot traffic in front of my house, obviously, so I sat in the cold for 9 hours waiting for business. And of course, not a single customer showed up. Though one person did give me advice to not. The next day, I was ready to continue selling, only to find out that my brother ate all my chewing gum. He still owes me $65. A couple weeks ago, I was at the mall with my friend, and you know how stores give out free samples sometimes? Well, as we walked past the Starbucks, the girl working there was asking every person passing by, "Do you want a free sample?" Already eating ice cream, we slipped on by while she was distracted with another customer. As we hopped on the escalator, I turned to my friend and said, for a second I thought she was gonna follow us asking if we wanted a free sample. My friend glared at me and pointed behind me, where the girl had also hopped on the escalator and heard my comment at full volume. I awkwardly smiled, and she asked, "Do you want a free sample?" Girl deserves a raise, Starbucks. When I was in high school, we had this group project where we had to create a world map on a huge green Bristol board. I was always intimidated by writing in permanent marker, but I very carefully wrote out every single continent on that board. Feeling pretty proud, I looked behind me to where my group was sitting, and they just had this blank stare like I had just committed a war crime. Turns out I had written North America up in Canada and South America in the United States. Crap. Well, trying to avoid the judgment, I ran so fast to try and find green Bristol board to cover this up. But by the time I got back, the group had finished the project without me. When I was a kid, I had a teacher who constantly needed to check work over at her desk. Well, one day while I was waiting for my turn, she stepped away to help a different student. This left me alone at her desk with the biggest grade book I had ever seen. Now, most people in this scenario would discreetly check their marks and then look away. Well, I'm not most people. So I picked up the book and then started telling everyone behind me all their marks. My teacher whipped around so fast, looked straight into my soul, and said, "Excuse your nose out of that book right now." I can safely say that I was not her favorite after that. When I was a kid, we had just moved into a new neighborhood and were lucky enough to have a play structure outside our house. So my siblings and I went to go play on it. But my dad was trying to explain that we shouldn't play there. Duly noted. Play only when an adult is not looking. Well, one day when we thought everyone was gone, we decided to go play on those swings. When suddenly, we were being chased by an older man wearing a towel. He was yelling at us to get off his property. Turns out that was actually my neighbor's play structure, and we never tried using it again.